Hi, I am Dustin Pickering from Parrot Literary Corner. You know me, your noble and honest host, and I've got exciting news for you. Last anthology, Series 1, The Literary Parrot, did such a great job. We wanted to continue to provide this community service to our viewers and to our contributors to the program. So please get up and get a copy immediately. You know, if you're in this book, you want to get a copy. If you're not in the book, you want to get a copy and see what we're doing. You want to be excited with us. We want you on this program, and we hope to see you sometime soon on The Literary Parrot. You have to get your hands on this copy. It's amazing. It's an absolutely beautiful anthology meant just for you. Our past guests have been invited back to contribute yet again to this Series 2. We do this quarterly anthology. We will be doing this after our 200 episode milestone. As of this last quarter, we reached 200 episodes, and past that, get up and get a copy immediately. This is the only TV show on earth for creative writers, and our guests are amazing. They're also community activists building from the ground up. This program is for everybody out there who is a creative mind. Order several copies if you can and donate to local libraries. Give them to your friends, cousins, fans, supporters, anybody that you think loves poetry. And it's not just poetry in this book. Remember, this is creative mind. So we have prose, fiction, short stories, essays, artwork, anything you can think of, artistically creative, photographs. Everything in this book is packed. It is packed. It is just absolutely packed. If you want to get your hands on it now.
All right, this is Foreign Policy Review now. I'm Carla Parcelli. I'll be your host today. I also have co-hosts Ben Toth and Billy Bob, who's not appearing on camera now. And our special guest today is Abdul Razak O. Hamzat from Nigeria. And we want to open the show by discussing why the world is subsidizing the U.S. economy and the nature of the petrodollar. And I'd like to open with Abdul Razak's views on that. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Yeah,
Yes, welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's nice. I had a wonderful time the last time because the conversation was engaging and enlightening. So it's good to be back today. Well, the conversation today is how is the world is subsidizing the U.S. economy. And it's interesting because when you look at the global economy, developing nations struggling to make growth. In a year, we can have the forecast of economic progression across different countries. 2%, 3%, 4% across. But for the United States of America, the US doesn't need to do anything really. All it has to do is to have the dollar. Because irrespective of the growth any country makes around the world, 2%, 3%, once the US just prints more dollars, all of the growth from other countries trickles down to the US. And that's just it. So the only thing the US needs to do to be the global power is just to continue to maintain the dollar as international currency, and that's all. And I had this conversation with someone recently, and I said, like, people don't understand why the US had to go to different continents of the world, fighting wars, trying to enforce certain principles. It's because that is what is needed to keep the dollar as an international currency. And provided the dollar is an international currency, US leadership needs to do nothing else on the economic front. All they have to do is print more dollars and fight all this war around the world to ensure that there is global control. So the US citizens, literally, some of you are angry with the US government for fighting wars around the world. But that's what they are using to subsidize your economy. If they don't fight those wars, then you will need more creative leaders that can, work more on developing the economy in such a way that more people have to do more work. Because today, they just had to just print more dollars, fire it all around, and then your life is better, even though it is not. But, I think that's what the U.S. government is doing, really.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. One statistic came to mind while you were talking was that 88% as of 2019, and this is changing, and we'll get into that, but as of 2019, 88% of the world's economic exchanges between countries took place under the petrodollar, which came into existence when the United States went off the gold standard under Richard Nixon, because the Vietnam War had basically bankrupted the United States. So what you're saying is right on the money. 88% of the world's economy now. Of course, China and other countries are now moving away from that. I would like to add that explaining some of the wars, such as the war in Iraq, or the heavy sanctions on Iran or Venezuela, they are now in existence because those countries, Iraq is a great example, stated publicly that they were going to move away from the dollar, and they were invaded as a consequence. That's a fact that's not normally brought up, but I'd like to get somebody else's opinion on.
An absolute. I'd like. Sorry.
Also, all right. Go ahead.
No, go for it. Sorry, we got a bit of a lag. Go for it.
I was just about to add that. I was looking at the combination. The petrodollar is a really important factor in U.S. global dominance, and I think that even though that is a major factor, it is not all of the factor, because the OPEC countries are in the controls about just 32% of global oil, and we still have certain countries in the BRIC group especially who also have a significant control. So for people who are thinking that just the petrodollar is enough to stop the US global dominance, I think what can really create a real change in global trade, in currency, is the combination of BRIC countries and OPEC countries coming together to make a definite decision about a currency of trade that they are going to adopt. Once that is done, I think that's what will bring the major change in global trade.
I agree, and that's happening faster than I would ever have imagined. There won't be enough letters to display BRICS, AS, whatever it is, because all the oil countries want to join them. They are joining the SCO. They have decidedly gone east, and every week we get new news from this country using the yuan, that country using its local currency instead of then dumping the US dollar. Brazil being the latest. And people are very angry about it, but it's happening fast. Remember, in Libya's Gaddafi, this got you killed. Just for wanting a gold-backed African lira, it got you killed. It got
but I think that the BRIC countries and the OPEC countries, I think doing it on individual currency might not necessarily achieve the long-term effect that we want. I think it will reap better if BRIC and OPEC have a kind of joint agreement and set up an international monitoring system and currency that can be adopted across board. Because if we are focusing on every country using their currency, it's not still going to achieve the kind of result we want. There is need to be an international currency that many of these countries, especially those, like we have Russia and Saudi Arabia, that are two of the three oil-producing nations. Both of them are in BRIC and OPEC, and even Russia is now in OPEC plus. And then we have almost the China that has more like a thriving economic growth right now. And then we have Russia that seems to have some military power. If that is combined with the OPEC-led Saudi Arabia, all of them coming together to agree on one single currency of international trade. It might not be any of the existing currency. They can come up with something new, because one country, if we say we're using yuan, for example, China could become another US in
They don't want
few
to be.
decades from now.
They explicitly don't want the yuan to be the global
No.
reserve. But what you're talking about is being announced at the upcoming BRICS summit in South Africa,
Yeah.
where Putin may or may not be going because of the ICC shenanigans. It's widely discussed that they want to introduce like gold, rare metals, and commodity-based.
I'm really following the summit in South Africa, and I will really be following to see the development over there.
And one thing that must be pointed out is the petrodollar was an agreement between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, and now the U.S. has lost Saudi Arabia, and that makes everything possible as far as international.
And technically, it wasn't even between the U.S. and the Saudi Arabia, but the U.S. and the House of Saud. Basically, protection, military protection, but you price all your gold in the Gulf in dollars. And they
I think the emergence of China in the game is really good, because one of the reasons why Saudi needs protection is largely because of Iran. And now that they are getting along with Iran, with China coming on board, US is literally becoming irrelevant in the system.
Yes, and not just in West Asia. Billy Bob.
We've heard a lot about, the U.S. global reserve currency becoming less powerful and being used less, and individual currencies, increasing. But you mentioned, Ben, that you've heard about, there's a lot of talk about a unified currency to kind of replace the U.S. petrodollar. I mean, I haven't heard too much about that. So it's kind of like a plan that is people are talking about, bringing, developing, but it hasn't been developed, right? I mean, we're at the planning stages.
It's not a simple transition you do in 2 weeks, but it's not a global reserve. It doesn't want to replace the dollar. It is a BRICS exchange currency that they want, which is tied to commodities like rare metals, oil, gold, wheat, that sort of stuff. A real asset.
Yeah, Russia has definitely discussed that. I know Putin has talked about that.
I believe they work more on it, especially if the summit's coming.
And you talked about Russia being a military power, which is now obvious to most of the world, but they've also rejoined the top 10 industries under the top 10 economies in the world, under the most sanctions that anybody's ever suffered. All their indicators are in the green, expanding, modernizing. It's amazing. The ruble should have been rubble.
Yeah, a lot is happening. I think things are happening faster than expected. But what I'm just saying is that just like the United States developed the IMF and the World Bank after the Second World War, which allows total control and regulations, the same has to happen for any currency to effectively take over from the dollar. If there is not such regulations or regulatory institutions put in place, then it's still not going to work as much as expected.
What do you mean by like regulations? Because the IMF, I'll just add something I found today, because as you know, there's like civil war going on in Imran Khan's Pakistan today. Lahore just looks like France. Paris did a couple of weeks ago. It's burning. And I just found this little thing that just in the end of January, there was a 3 million IMF loan going up for renewal in Pakistan. And Mr. Imran Khan didn't take it. And the IMF, I mean, if you talk about regulations, sure, we'll give you this loan. Hungary got one of these, but you have to privatize everything, sell your state assets. Those are the conditionalities. And when you mean regulation, I'm sure you don't mean that. I think China wants to...
No, that's not what I mean. That's what I'm talking about.
That's predatory. Yeah.
The IMF is literally the United States of America. But it is a global institution. And if the United States doesn't want a country based on one reason or the other, it can use the regulations of saying, it has gone against certain international standard, international rule, international processes, and they become like the enforcer of certain international norms. So what I'm saying is, irrespective of how we see the US abusing all of these powers, The fact is that if we want an effective alternative to the United States, we have to create an alternative institution that will not only rival the IMF and the World Bank and others, but will also have institutions that other people can control as well and have impact in how the regulations are implemented, so that it is not just one country that will be in charge of everything.
True. But I think that is the approach of China and Russia. I mean, the New Development Bank, which is the BRICS big central bank organ, which was just taken over by, former Brazilian socialist leader, Dilma Rousseff. She's the new head of the New Development Bank.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's why I think they need to have more influence of OPEC members who are now joining BRIC as well. That BRIC needs to be expanded and be more inclusive and more participatory in nature.
And that's happening. I would add, you added OPEC. I would add ASEAN. I would add the Eurasian Union and the SCO. I mean, all of these in different time frames, they create these little groupings, regional groupings. That I think in front of our eyes, they're molding into this huge economic bloc, like becoming integrated with each other.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
What kind of steps is the U.S. taking to counter that?
Sanctions,
of course. I think it's, U.S. does not understand any other language than force. Although they will come under democracy. And you say, oh, we want you to have freedom. But you only have to choose between being bombed or being sanctioned or being forced to adopt certain abnormal or certain lifestyle that you don't understand. And that's all you have to choose from. Once you want to exercise that freedom outside of the choice of the US, then it's no longer freedom. It's no longer democracy. And they will be willing to join in truncating your democracy just because it doesn't conform with what the US wants. And that's not proper anymore.
True, and it's having the opposite effect as intended, these sanctions. Increasingly, I don't know if you read, we are the wise European, Ursula, the wise European leader. She's passed the 11th round of sanctions, which include 35 companies from China, the United Arab Emirates, Armenia, and Uzbekistan. So they're just expanding it. And that means those countries, okay, we're going to stick together even more. We're going to abandon the dollar and the euro.
Yeah, more countries will be devising ways to evade the sanction or find a way around it. And the more people find an alternative to sanctions, the more sanctions become irrelevant. And especially now that there is, concerted effort against the dollar, once there is an alternative to the dollar, U.S. sanctions literally become meaningless. And I think before
Marco Rubio, I was thinking the same thing. Marco Rubio explicitly said that in 4 years, we can't sanction anybody. He said that live on telly.
He was lamenting the fact that sanctions are going to be irrelevant soon.
I'm making a great point.
That's an excellent point. And I would also point out that Ukraine serves as a perfect example of what we're talking about, because the reason that Yanukovych was couped the second time was because he refused an IMF loan that was draconian, that was going to destroy what little was left after the first color revolution in Ukraine. And he didn't want to do that to the Ukrainian people. And as I point out to the many ninnies I talk to every day, I don't talk to intelligent people like you guys most of the time. I point out that now Ukraine is the poorest country under U.S. tutelage, the poorest country in Europe, the poorest.
And the most corrupt. But if you follow if you follow the Western news, it just became among the top 10 freest for the press, according to what do you call those, Journalists Without Borders, something like that. If you believe that, I mean.
Well, maybe they've killed or imprisoned everybody that opposes them, so maybe they are free now.
Yeah, freedom, baby.
That's funny.
Well, you can't trust NGOs. That's the first thing you learn when you start grade school in this stuff. When you go to the first grade of U.S. foreign policy, don't trust in the NGOs. I think that's the second day of class.
And it's a little bit of a misnomer, the N, because all NGOs are government funded.
Yes.
So they're government organizations. They put the N on there as if they're not government funded, but all NGOs, USAID, they're all government.
This is really an important point, because like over here in Nigeria, for example, government doesn't fund any NGO, and any affiliation to individual politicians whatsoever, if Western media will bounce on those individuals or those NGOs with some level of affiliation and describe them as for government NGOs. Like government, like no government is not funding any NGO, but if you have people in government or one politician or the other, probably you are known to be a friend or an associate or somehow related to a government official, or your NGO is branded as government NGO, even if you have no government support. But in US, where most NGOs are funded by the government, they describe them as independent, non-partisan. And sometimes I want to like, if your government is funding all these NGOs and you describe those foreign funded NGOs as non-partisan, how do you have the moral right to really complain about another NGO that is not even funded by government, by the way, but just maybe some affiliation here and there? I don't really understand how that works, really.
Me neither. And sometimes they say it's non-governmental. I was in Slovenia for the weekend, and my friend, I hope he's watching, Greg Jankovic, told me his new was GMO, was government-motivated organizations. And I thought I'd plug that because that's really good. Like if you go into some of these think tanks and NGOs, and okay, there's no US government or NED, but there's like all of these foreign weapons makers, all of these big industrialists, and that's supposedly that's how you're neutral in the case. It's just ridiculous. Always follow the money.
Because people like the US aid, for example, like most of
Samantha Power, yeah.
Let me say like 90% of NGOs in Nigeria are funded by foreign governments. US, UK, Canada, more than 90% of NGOs in Nigeria are funded by them. Now, they describe these foreign government-funded NGOs as non-partisan, independent. But let's have like about 5% of the NGOs that are not funded by foreign government. Probably they couldn't access foreign funding, or they are just not interested in foreign funding, and they are operating in the country. Whatever those organizations that are not funded by foreign governments say is often branded as partisan.
Partisan, yeah.
And the question is, how can a foreign government be funding an organization in Nigeria and you describe them as non-partisan? And then an organization that is not funded by anyone is described as partisan. It's still strange. I think you guys can explain to me. Maybe I'm not that intelligent, I guess.
Oh, no, it's Newspeak. You're completely right. It's a logical impossibility, but it's Newspeak for how you're supposed to think.
They're marginalizing those domestic groups using propaganda because they don't control them. So I mean, and that's it. They control the foreign NGOs, and those things do for the interests of the Western capitalist class. But your domestic groups, they don't control those, and so they try and disparage them, and they want to marginalize and weaken them. But
in fact, because Chatham House sponsored someone who works at the U.S. Embassy to write beautiful nonsense, as I describe it, an article in which they specifically go out they categorize the foreign government-funded organizations as the non-partisan ones, and they list out several organizations that are not funded by foreign government as the political organizations or the partisan ones, and they want a situation where you automatically see these organizations as being sponsored by government, pro-government organization. And it's strange how the US and these foreign organizations or government don't see how absurd that sounds sometimes.
I'd like to bring in the example of Georgia, where they just this was a couple of months back. They proposed to introduce a law, which is the foreign funding of NGOs. If you're more than 20% foreign funded, you have to declare it. That was all. That was the law. And it was all of these NGO people, like with EU flags and freedom and all that, were took to the streets and defeated, basically under pressure. The government just, okay, we're not going to have this law. And the EU, a week later, basically passed the same sort of law. It's okay for us, not okay for you guys, to differentiate between these two. And now Georgia, apparently with Russia, can reopen airlines, cross airlines between them. And the US has already threatened, if you do this, we're going to sanction your flights, basically, your airlines. The hubris, the hypocrisy is just enormous.
I think it's important to just cut through the notion of NGOs and go right to the source, and that's the Central Intelligence Agency and other intelligence services in the United States. Because there's many famous propagandists who simply predate this notion of NGOs. Ed Lansdale is one that springs to mind. He was the architect of many psyops operations, including telling the Catholics in Vietnam that Jesus had gone to South Vietnam, and so all the Catholics in the North fled to the South. This kind of lying is fundamental to the Central Intelligence Agency, and they've now created these kind of arms of in the NED and the USAID to use these methodologies to spread essentially what are simply lies. They know they're lies. There's no doubt about it. So NGOs are just an extension of the agitprop propaganda apparatus of the United States, and nothing more than that.
The CIA had poor branding after the Church Commission. The CIA was kind of a bad brand, so they switched their logos, their acronyms, and now we get USAID and National Endowment for Democracy. So they sound better than Central Intelligence Agency with all the bad connotations.
What I like about the NED is which is overtly saying, well, we are doing the stuff that the CIA did back in the day. We can now do it. Yeah. That's the NED, basically. Right. And they have this list of organizations and things they fund country by country because they're proud of it. And you can see that as much as they're involved is the amount of meddling, basically. That's it. And I want to ask, because Carlo would know this, how long has the US had like this foreign agents, foreign influence law, where the NGOs have to declare if they have foreign funding? I think for ages, but I'm not.
Oh, yeah, 1938. I think it's forever. 1938. Yeah, yes, it predates World War II.
For us, not for you.
If you're a foreign agent, you operate in the United States, you have to report that to the U.S. government that you're a foreign agent operating in the U.S. I think it's 1938. I'm almost certain it's 1938.
I mean, unless you're British or Israeli or Australian.
Allies, yes. But obviously, RT made a big, when you get merchandise thing out of it. You can get foreign agent T-shirts, foreign agent badges, bags, and all that. Because neither of us, maybe Hamza can look at RT. I can't in Europe. I have to use clones and all that. And I don't think the Americans can.
I was just laughing because, the other time we had conversation on the channel, I bragged about Nigeria not too big or too serious-minded not to have a foreign military base in our border. And after the show, I had to double-check myself to be sure that I am not saying things that probably had changed. And when I checked, that's when I saw that even we don't really have foreign military base in that sense of it, but we have something that is a resemblance of that, and which was the base that was established in 2014 by the UK, which was more like a collaborative effort with UK, US, and some other Western countries under the guise of helping Nigeria to find the missing Chibok girls, the kidnapped Chibok girls.
Let's hold this. Let's hold this till after the break, Hamzat. We're gonna have a quick break, and then we'll come back with your self criticism from your last show.
All right.
If the producer wants to take us to break, we will take a quick break and be right back. If not, Hamzat will continue his.
We're going there now.
None of us have control over the break button.
According to chat. Yes.
So, okay, let me kind of set up.
Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you.
We're back. I think we'll go back to Abdul Rakaz. They let him finish.
I was hoping to set it up a little bit
because you wrote a great article of this topic.
So on the last time Hamzat was on our program, we were discussing the different approaches to Africa, with the U.S. providing security and China helping with development. And we asked him, in Nigeria, is the West providing security? Do they have military bases? And we were pleased to hear that Nigeria really didn't have any foreign military bases in its country, unlike many other African nations. So and we know that the U.S. isn't trying to provide security; they're trying to control the resources. Right? They're sending our the military and building military bases not to secure the welfare of the people, but to steal their resources. So. But yeah, it was nice to hear Nigeria didn't have foreign military bases. But then Hamzat did some in-depth research, and he found some interesting things, which he wrote a long, detailed article about. But I don't want to say any more than that, Hamzat. If you want to continue from there.
Yeah, in 2014, that was the peak of Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria, and at the time, Boko Haram had kidnapped some girls in Chibok, in Borno State, Nigeria. And I was one of those individuals who were part of those who convened to bring back our girls. And we did that because we genuinely believed that some girls had been kidnapped in Borno, and the government needs to do more to bring them back. Unfortunately, the government initially denied this incident happened. And this, aggravated a lot of people, and we established a kind of sustained pressure on the government every single day, gathering at the Unity Fountain in Abuja, calling for the Bring Back Our Girls, and more people begin to join that advocacy, and it became an international or global campaign. And as a result of the global attention that this campaign got, the government were put under immense pressure to act. That was when the foreign government came in. The UK, US, they offered to assist Nigeria in locating the girls. Though Nigeria didn't give them an opportunity to have a base in the country to do that, but they were doing it from the military bases they have outside of Nigeria. So all Nigeria did was to grant them access to our airspace for surveillance purpose in search for the girls, which they did. But after the exercise, they claimed that they had located the girls. And the Nigerian government were, okay, give us these details so we can do the rescue. But they refused. and insisted that Nigeria must give them a military base inside Nigeria for them to carry out these rescue operations by themselves. And the
And then
government
they
said,
stayed.
no,
Now,
that
I
was
want
how that. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I just wanted to add that
Okay.
that
So that was
um,
how it's supposed
okay.
to happen.
Bit
But
of a lag.
somehow I found out that after that operation, after they claimed that after the Nigerian government refused to grant them access, they changed their focus. I was surprised last week to discover that that same exercise, that same operation that they claimed that they were just going to be providing some technical support, has led to a kind of mini base, sort of, because since 2014 till date, they are still operating in Nigeria, increasing their personnel to up to 700 personnel, which is not known to a lot of people because it is seen as just a technical partnership, not military operation. But from what I have seen and followed in that conversation, it appears to me that that is more like a mini military base being operated in the country, which was as a result of claim that they want to assist the country to rescue the Chibok girls, which I kind of feel guilty because I was part of those who were advocating putting pressure on the government until they will have to succumb to certain kind of arrangement that does not, have long-term good for the country. So I think I feel the need to bring that to the conversation.
It's very suspicious how that all happened. Carlo, what were you going to say?
Well, I looked around and I went to one of my bogeymen at the DoD, AFRICOM, and I discovered that there is indeed an American base in Nigeria. It's called the Kanji Air Base, and they just spent $38 million refurbishing it, and the planes that fly out of it are A-29 Super Tucans. They're Brazilian prop planes. I don't know how many they have. I didn't get that figure, but they're propeller planes. I can't imagine they're much use in combat. But there is that base, and they did spend $38 million, which is basically lunch money for the Joint Chiefs. So it's really not a significant amount of money. But there is that small base in Nigeria right now operating. I would imagine reconnaissance.
9 years ago, there was a technical cooperation agreement, right? 2014, and then they just forgot to leave, which is something they like to do.
Yeah. This is one of the issues that we have. Nigeria was fighting with Boko Haram, and in 2014, 2015, Nigeria requires certain military equipment. I think like the Super Tucano, which they believe will help in handling the security situation more effectively. Unfortunately, the United States government refused to sell that Tucano to Nigeria, claiming that Nigeria had bad human rights record. Now, Boko Haram is killing hundreds of people, and this is required to stop them. They are kidnapping hundreds of people. They have displaced millions of people, and the government needs this to stop them. But the U.S. government refused to sell to them under the guise of human rights until the government agrees to allow this base that you're talking about, because they claim that they will use the base as a training for the Nigerian officials on how to properly use the facility, and then probably they want to have some kind of oversight over the utilization of the facility, which I think is more like a decoy, because what they really wanted is a base here where they will have greater control and greater access for their own operations under the guise of oversighting with the use of the US made equipment. But this is just some ways that even if the bigger one, like the officially established base, is not possible, then this kind of, mini bases through some kind of agreement that are not so straightforward, but they hide under them to operate.
Right.
They are trying as much as possible to
if
have these
officially
bases
there's
around.
700 personnel on the base, I mean, unofficially there could be 5,000. You know,
That's
so
it. That's
there's no
that's the point.
transparency.
And,
There is
Yeah.
no transparency whatsoever.
no, and a lot of them are they're under the guise of being corporate people. They're actually military people.
You're
And
right.
this brings us to an interesting, the Wagner Group. When the French got thrown out of Mali because they could not effectively counter Boko Haram, and the Wagner Group went in there and they did a good job apparently, because I see people holding up signs that thank you Russia, basically. Same with Burkina Faso. And now we have the situation that Ben knows quite a bit about in
Right.
Sudan. And here we have a situation where Russia says that they want to set up a naval base at Port Sudan. And suddenly you have civil war again in Sudan. My goodness, what a surprise. And then as I was looking back a little bit on this, I ran into this article on investment and why the Wagner Group was in Africa. They were apparently in 6 or 7 countries, and this dealt with the Central Republic of Congo. And it stated that the Wagner Group was in Central Republic,
Central African Republic.
right?
I
To
think.
get to Central African Republic to get these minerals out, manganese. Well, why would the Russians want to go there when they have 230 million tons of manganese currently? Silicon. Russia's the second largest producer of silicon in the fucking world. And gold. Russia has the 4th largest gold reserves in the world. I don't think the Wagner Group is there to expedite these minerals finding their way to Moscow. It's just lies and really ignorant lies. It just takes
It's not
5
just-
minutes to refute them.
It's not just lies, it's projection. It's obvious projections because the Sudan, remember that Blinken wanted immediate ceasefire, which means his guys are not winning. That was obviously a sign. It lasted for an hour. But then Biden himself, by executive order, put Sudan under sanctions, or Sudanese people. I haven't looked into the details, but that's another clear sign. Things are not going well. But the latest, which is indicative of how they think of Wagner, is probably doing what we did for many years because the French want to designate Wagner as a terrorist organization. Them and the Brits are pretty butthurt about this private military contractor, they say, but we can see it's very integrated into Russia. But, Prigozhin at the beginning of this said there are no Wagner people in Sudan. We said that.
And the particular article I'm talking about, there are. Let me look it up and see how many Western companies, mining companies, are in the Central Republic,
As well as the French Foreign Legion.
Long. But the image that they projected, this is how stupid the Western media is. The image they were young men filling these bags supposedly with these rare earths and these minerals. If you look at the list of the companies, these people have huge machinery on site in these countries. There's not little kids filling bags for pennies a day. That's nonsense. What idiots these people think the world is. So anyway, that just infuriates me.
I think this should bring us back to the U.S. politics. What's the U.S. politics like, and where does it need to go? Because the direction of the U.S. politics dictates a lot. And yesterday, I watched Donald Trump, who is one of the leading Republican aspirants.
The CNN town hall. Did you watch that?
It was an interesting engagement, but I would like to hear from you on that.
Anybody want to go first?
That's touchy subject. But before we go there, I wanted to make one final point about, to try to wrap and encapsulate what we're talking about. It seems that, the U.S. has this modus operandi of creating terrorist threats as pressure and leverage on certain governments to get what they want. So remember Coney in 2012? That was just a huge advertising campaign and it didn't really make any sense. It came out of nowhere, and it was utilized to pressure the Ugandan government. And then you had ISIS in Syria. They tried to use that to topple the Syrian government. And then Boko Haram is being used as a boogeyman all over North Africa.
The Kurds were the same, yeah.
So, at what point are these terrorist organizations just basically proxies of Western imperialism? I mean, there's just such a fine line. And they don't want to give Nigeria the weapons to destroy them because that's their proxy force. They don't want their proxy force destroyed by Nigeria, so they're not going to give Nigeria the weapons. They say, "No, we'll do it. We'll do it."
Yeah, we have to add to that a lot of these groups like ISIS are trained by the Central Intelligence Agency.
For sure.
And that a lot of the arms going to Ukraine ostensibly are finding their way into North Africa. It's just the U.S. is just corrupt to the core.
I have to add, before we go on to Trump, that could be our finishing thing. I like that Europe at least is like overtly colonialist, because the French, they have 0 active gold mines, yet they have gold flowing in from all these places, and they just send the Foreign Legion there. That's their enforcement mechanism. It's not just made of French people, but it's their arm. It's obvious. Whereas the US likes to use, hey, anybody who wants a little bit of money, anybody who will help us, and basically that's the Ukrainian Banderites, as well as, you can achieve this goal for us, but we don't have to do the fighting. So they do this remote controlled, basically. They without setting foot, because I think they got very embarrassed in Afghanistan when they had to move out from there.
It's expensive. I mean, lifetime health care for veterans, that costs a lot of money.
Oh, yeah, and grievances at home, coffins coming home. That's not easy. And in the middle of this, we have Biden. We also have RFK Jr., completely censored out, putting their name into the hat of the U.S. elections. And I don't know who wants to go first. I really enjoyed the CNN town hall and the absolute outrage from the liberals afterwards, because it got the top ratings, like everybody was watching it.
I don't know much about it. Go ahead, Billy Bob.
I missed it. I read about it. I did not watch it. I think I was at work. It's going to be an interesting season. Like you mentioned, Kennedy, Trump.
Old Joe.
Are they I don't know. The primaries are so easy to rig. The Republicans can rig their primary against Trump. The Democrats can rig their primary against Kennedy. Who they're going to run, that's a good question.
Yeah. To what extent is the question? Because someone's overwhelming, like Trump is compared to DeSantis. I wonder how much they can rig that.
Yeah, I mean, can they
the
rig
Democrats,
it with a straight face?
Yeah, the Democrats, what they do is they airbrushed RFK Jr. out. They basically, these people would vote for Trump, these people would vote for Biden, and these people would vote for someone else. He's not even on the little tables they do on television. So he's just airbrushed out.
Well, Hamzat, the elections in Nigeria are getting interesting as we approach Inauguration Day. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think the elections in Nigeria has come and gone, although the presidential tribunal is still on right now. And it's nothing new, really, because since 1999, Nigeria's election had always been contested in court. For example, the sitting president, Muhammad Buhari, contested in 2003. And after losing the election, he went to court. The same happened in 2007. The same happened in 2011 until 2015, where he formed an alliance with Bola Tinubu before he was able to win. And the question had always been, all these years that Buhari had been going to court, claiming that he won, could he have really won? The answer is no. He doesn't have the required structure. He does not have the required spread. He does not have the required organization. So you couldn't have won even if he wanted to win. Of course, that does not mean there is no any kind of rigging. Of course, there could be rigging in some ways. But the reason why he is not president all of those times was not necessarily because he was rigged out of the election, because he does not have the required organization and spread to win. In Nigeria, for example, we have 36 states. And for you to be president of Nigeria, you must have at least 25% in 2/3 of the country. which means that you must have at least 25% in 25 states of the federation. If you don't have 25% in 25 states, even if you have the majority vote, you still could not win.
That's
Uh,
an odd system.
This is one factor. So in this 2023 election, Bola Tinubu is the only one that could have won, or an Atiku Abubakar of PDP could have won. The third guy, the Labour Party guy, Peter Obi, he couldn't have won. Even if nobody else is competing with him, he couldn't have won because he does not have the required organization. He does not have the required spread. He does not have, the required platform. But he seems to be the loudest on the social media. He got a lot of Western support from the CNN, from all the Western propaganda machinery, and that helps him to also get attention of the Nigerians in diaspora who, gave him a lot of donations. And they are the ones making some kind of noise about the election largely, but he could not have won. Atiku Abubakar, who is from the PDP, he could have won because they are the major opposition party. While the APC has 20 states, they control 20 states out of 36. The PDP, on the other hand, controls 15 states. And we have one other party, APGA, controlling one state. But unfortunately for them, just before the election, 5 of the PDP governors said they are not going to support their presidential candidate because they believe that there is an unwritten zoning arrangement in the country in which if the southern part of the country produces the president this time, then the next president should come from the northern part of the country. And so, as Buhari is from the north and has served for 8 years, some of the governors in PDP felt that their presidential ticket should have been given to somebody from the southern part of the country. And since Atiku Abubakar of the northern state also won the presidential ticket from their party, they came out under G5 governors to declare openly that they are not going to support their presidential candidate. And that automatically makes it almost impossible for the PDP to win. This is apart from the fact that even the Labour Party was the 2019 vice presidential candidate in PDP. And just until few weeks to the primary in PDP, he was a presidential aspirant contest for the primary in PDP. But because he saw that he couldn't win the primary election, he left the party to join an old party in Labour Party. And he moved to Labour Party with the people from the Southeast region. And if you recall, the Southeast region in Nigeria has been agitating for power for a very long time. In fact, we have some secessionist agitation going on in that part of the country. So as he is from that part and he went to another party to contest for presidency, most people from that region supported him, thereby cutting votes that were supposed to go to the main opposition PDP, and he had significant that. And another undoing is that he was campaigning largely on religion. He was campaigning largely on religion, and to an extent that he was going from one church to the other, raising a lot of religious tension and segregation, and saying that it is more like a religious war for him. And he campaigned only in the Christian-dominated areas. In the south, he campaigned in the Christian-dominated area, and even when he went to the north, he did not go to any other place other than the Christian-dominated areas. So he would go to only the Christian-dominated area to campaign. And in his result, he actually got votes, considerable votes from all of those places. But those votes are just not enough to make anyone president. And this is what the situation is.
Because roughly Nigeria is separated 50-50 Christian Muslim, with the Christians
You're right.
concentrated in the South, and
Yeah.
now we've had now with Buhari and Tinubu, you've got two consecutive Muslim presidents, and
Yeah.
the Christians feel like they're being left out of public policy. So
You're right.
my
You're
question,
right.
my
That's one
question,
part of it, though. That's one part of it. The other part of it is that, you know, in the Western media, Nigeria is often portrayed as Muslim North, Christian South, right? Now, Tinubu is from the South, but he is a Muslim. And now, a region, southern region that is often described as Christian South, now has a Muslim president. And that made it, you know, a lot of Christians from that part felt outraged that this is the only opportunity for them to be able to control and produce the president, because it will be hard for the Christians from the North to become president, because the North had majority Muslims. But even this Muslim South, Muslim North, Christian South is not entirely right. In the northern region, for example, in North Central, we have more Christians than Muslims. In Northeast, we have Christians and Muslims almost the same. It is only in the Northwest that we have dominant Muslims in the North. So in a region like in the North, we have Northwest, Northeast, and North Central. In the North Central, we have majority Christians. In the Northeast, we have Christian and Muslim equally. And in the Northwest, we have majorly Muslims. So, and in the South, in the Southwest, we have more Muslims in the Southwest. In the Southeast and South-South, we have more Christians. So all this labeling of Muslim North, Christian South, they are not helping in any way, because they just do not reflect the kind of growth and development that we want.
How will this play out? How will this play out?
We only have a few minutes left. I have to say that your demographics sound eye-wateringly complex. No wonder they're all contested, right? The elections.
How with the election tribunal, how will this play out?
Well, I think I don't really see much to the election tribunal, to be honest. Tinubu won the elections hands down, and he is the only one that could have won the election. Well, you know, everyone has a right to approach the court for interpretation or reinterpretation of the situation. But I believe that nothing much can come from that. Tinubu was the rightful winner of the election, and he won hands down.
So no January 6th for Nigeria.
Yeah.
No, January.
When does he assume office? When is he going to assume office?
He will assume office on May 29.
Okay, so that's pretty soon, and that's pretty much a sure thing that's going to happen.
Of course, it will happen, definitely. The transition process is ongoing already.
But it does sound complicated. It does sound like all these social issues and religious issues keep people from really making effective change. And it's really hard to change the status quo due to the gridlock and the 50-50 demographics. It's difficult to just really get unity and make necessary changes to benefit the Nigerian people. But you're pretty optimistic that he can do it, right?
No, he is the right guy for this job, and I'm very optimistic about it. I'm really hopeful, because he has a lot of experience in bringing people together, and he has never been someone tearing people apart. Once he gets on board, he's going to get ground running, and I'm hopeful that he's going to do great things for the country.
Good. I like
your optimism. We will have you back to see how he's doing, for sure.
Yeah. Because to me, and I don't mean this in a negative tone at all, it sounded as complex as like a miniature India. You know, it's not easy because all the different regions.
It is not. You know, that's why we need someone who has enough human capacity and ability to bring things together. And this guy is the guy for us. Yeah.
What do you say that the American phrase is? You cross the cross the border between one party and the other, cross the aisle. Is that how it's said? Yeah, to work
he
together.
reached out across the aisle.
Yeah, we have the Electoral College here. I
Okay.
was very impressed. I was very impressed by Buhari's vice president, the Yemi Osinbajo. Is that the way you pronounce it? He's a very impressive guy.
Yeah.
I would vote for him.
Yeah, he's Tinubu's protege, you know. In fact, he's also part of the conversation in the whole election because Tinubu brought him to be Buhari's vice president. And a lot of issues happened when he wanted to run and Tinubu wants to run. He does not have any structure or any political standing of his own. He simply starts on Tinubu's goodwill. And once Tinubu wants to use it for himself, then that's all for him.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a little bit more competent than Kamala Harris, who dropped from a coconut tree, according to her mom? If you've seen the latest little video,
he was very diplomatic when he was with Kamala Harris when he came to Washington.
Very intelligent man. Intelligent man.
Yeah, he's he's polished.
It was a joke. I just saw that video that her mom apparently told her she fell from a coconut tree or something, and it was just way too funny. Kamala, cackling Kamala.
I think Osinbajo is far better than Kamala Harris. You know, he is an highly intellectual. Is the pastor he has put in him as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming back.
Yeah, this was really educational as well.
Yes.
I think maybe we could go around the clock with last minute thoughts because I am going to follow Nigeria much more closely than I have recently. But there are all the other like hotspots in this geo basically strategic war. And one was obviously now the civil war in Pakistan, which I'm going to follow because the latest was that the High Court of Pakistan ordered that he be his imprisonment was illegal. He needs to be set free and he needs to appear before the High Court. Something's going on there. And obviously this Sunday we have the election in Turkey. That's going to be interesting. The Western headlines have been about Sultan and dictator and the future of freedom is decided. It's been very anti-Erdogan, so that will be interesting to me. And finally, I have India, which I've always claimed I like India, but it's sort of playing the dancing game even worse, which is why Joe Biden has invited Modi next month to a summit in Washington, trying to pry it desperately away from the East. And I just wish they made up their mind one way or the other. These are the things I'll be paying attention to.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think India is trying to strike some balance anyway. I'm also following India because of their issue with China and Pakistan. But, you know, we'll see how the whole thing unfolds.
Yeah, but that's what Yanukovych did. He tried to strike a balance.
Fatal.
Yeah.
Like Kissinger says.
Yeah, it can be. But, you know, India is a much stronger country. So,
bye, guys.
Hi, Shanika, and thank you for being here always.
Yes.
Thank you. It's nice being with you.
Yeah. Well, we're still on.
Well, it's always a little awkward going to break or ending the show.
Yeah, because the producer is not one of us, you know. So I guess he said we got 10 extra minutes, so maybe we got 7 more to fill.
Okay,
that's what I thought.
So you know, I wanted to mention House resolution. Shoot.
War resolution, World War III resolution. Yeah, you just sent this to us.
Yeah, I read the resolution after you posted that.
Okay.
It's not as brutal as the journalist who wrote that article points it out to be.
I haven't seen that.
It's go ahead, Billy Bob. You know better than I do.
Oh, I mean, it was Eric Zeus wrote that, you know, it essentially, you know, was making U.S. policy that Ukraine is going to win in their fight against Russia. They're going to reconquer all their former territories that have been lost, and that's going to be U.S. law. And so, if this resolution passes, I mean, it's basically demanding that, you know, it's U.S. law that we go to have World War III if Ukraine loses. So it's just bizarre. It's just bizarre, you know, these kinds of resolutions that they bring up. But it was very interesting, and it's just, you know, the delusional hubris of the West, thinking that because they make a law, it's going to happen in reality. It's bizarre.
Yeah,
That's
I
law.
think that's connected. I think that's connected to the question the CNN anchor was asking Donald Trump yesterday. Even though he said he is not interested in winner or loser, he just wants the war to stop and people to stop dying. The anchor was still asking him that he has to choose a winner. And I was like, somebody said he doesn't want a winner in a war. He wants the war to stop. And you're insisting that he must choose a side. I like,
That was
this is
that was the
terrible.
best part. That was the best part, and to a massive applause from the audience, who are obviously peak
Everybody
liberals.
wants the war
It was
to stop,
fantastic.
except
I
for
think,
people with vested interests.
yeah, and I think that anchor is out of a job because she got humiliated by Trump. Also, he used his own language,
In
calling her a
fact,
nasty person.
I was surprised an international channel like CNN could have that kind of anchor because she seems too ignorant and too, biased or sentimental or whatever for such kind of engagement. I think it was a disservice to the station.
We'd love to do a 4-hour show, Shaniqua. I really would, because it's always very interesting, especially near the end when we want to say more. But 1 hour of Carlo being angry would be, I think, the best. Cheers, Shanika. Okay, yeah.
Probably one of these days, maybe I'm going to be in the US, and then we can be together in more,
It's far for me, but maybe one day. Yeah, I wanted to add.
Oh, go
on
ahead.
top
Go
of
ahead,
that, they're codifying in law that Ukraine has to win, which I don't know how that works in the mind of anybody. Yeah. But in the meantime, in reality, the banks are melting. They are approaching a debt default crisis, basically. And Biden's talking about this. He's not going to the G7 summit in Hiroshima because he's afraid of this crisis. But he is sending Janet Yellen to reassure everybody that the U.S. banking system is fine and the world is developing in a positive. That's what they're doing, and sanctioning everybody left and right, and that's their answer to everything.
Sorry, I have to go. I have an appointment to catch. I just forgot. Oh God.
I'm sorry.
All right, Hamza, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Without you,
great to have you back, and we can
I'm gonna
wrap
have to
it up.
watch that Trump town hall. I didn't catch it, but Trump he provides something that no other politician does, right? He doesn't read from a script.
Viewers.
And you watch an Obama press conference or a Biden press conference, it's worthless. You don't learn anything. They don't say anything worthwhile. Everything's already been decided behind the scenes. They trot him out for the fake questions that are already prepared in advance, and then he leaves. But that's just not how it is with Trump. So that's refreshing. And I'm not saying Trump is genuinely anti-war. Like, he's an opportunist. He's not principled. You can definitely make that argument. But it's still nice to see it. And it's nice to see him expose CNN for their whatever it is, whatever expletive you want to use with CNN. It's total fake news. It's narrative promotion. It's propaganda 100%.
Yeah. Just saying the quiet part out loud and doing it in his own way, I think, is a gift. As a communist, I would prefer him to be a president, definitely, to Biden. Definitely, even though I don't agree with most of his policy. He is a game show host, deal-making person I don't respect. But I do get a lot out of his outbursts.
Let me do a little psychobabble about Trump.
Yeah, go.
I think Trump is a coward, and I think he's afraid of any kind of violence, and I think that goes for the violence of war too. It's like he can't stand blood, and so it's like a peace just to him kind of comes naturally because he doesn't feel like somebody's going to come up and punch him in the face. And I think I run into people like that in my experience in my life that are like Shaniqua says, blowhards, and but in reality, if push came to shove, they wouldn't want to be the object of violence. They can talk it when they need to, but when it's like it's their decision, they're probably not going to want to bring any kind of harm on themselves. So whenever he reads something like, well, if I start a war here or start a war there, it's going to make me a target. He doesn't want to do that for himself.
That's good.
I don't know if it's good or not, but It's psychobabble, but I babble on sometimes.
No, I really like that. I mean, a narcissist combined with cowardice is a good combination, I think,
Exactly.
right now in this world.
The
To
narcissism
preside
plays
over a
huge
declining
role.
empire that still has the potential to cause a lot of damage on its
Yeah.
way down.
Exactly. And that could be our wrapping up final phrase. Anybody for anybody else as last minute?
Well, one thing about Ukraine is I'm of two minds because, frankly, I'm still in the category where Russia going in has saved so many lives. Because if that
Obviously.
60 to 80,000 group of Nazis had marched on the Donbass, it would have been a slaughterhouse. And so, when you're talking 200,000, 300,000 deaths, there were 2.5 million Russian-speaking people left there of the 4.5 million that were there initially, and that would have been ugly, and as Christopher Black pointed out, I think quite accurately, they would not have stopped. The Nazis would not have stopped at the Russian border. They would have kept on going. So
That's what Russia does, and I think that's where we'll end, according to our producer. Thank you, everybody.
yes.
Undoubtedly, Africa is the best tourism destination on Earth. The continent is blessed with the most conducive atmosphere. To feel and enjoy these blessings, join the most productive one-week tour of the continent organized by Daylight Africa every September 2nd to September 9th to see beyond the fallacies about Africa on the mainstream media. Contact us at daylightafrica@gmail.com or call 718-822-5555. Daylight Africa. Revolutionizing tourism industries in Africa.